What is your own ghost story? Not my personal experience, but my little brother. When he was about 5 or 6, he suddenly started talking to himself when he was playing in his room. Eventually, we asked him who it was he was talking to, thinking it was an imaginary friend. My stepdad didn't believe in ghosts and all that until he told us who he was talking to. Amanda. Amanda was my stepdad's cousin that died from cancer when she was only 12. The last place she was at other than the hospital was our old property. Another incident with Amanda happened while my brother and I were at school and my mom was at work. My stepdad watched TV in the living room, and all the animals were in the room with him. He had just finished cleaning up my brother's toys and putting them in the box in the corner of his room. There was a loud clattering sound from my brother's room, and my stepdad went to check it. The box of toys was upside down in the middle of the room, all of the toys still in the box. The animals couldn't have possibly done it because they were all with him, and let's be real, they aren't capable of doing such a thing. He, later on, told us, that's something only Amanda would do. I refuse to mention or talk about these experiences around him because it hits him hard. The way he described her, she was a sweet and childish girl that just wanted to have fun. I never had any encounters with her, but she was my brother's best friend. He eventually stopped seeing her, and he told us, she didn't want to make Andy sad anymore, so she went away. I cry thinking about this. Rest in peace, Amanda. In my old room, when I'm completely still, and it's absolutely quiet, I would hear weeping, like someone is crying. It was barely audible, and the source of the noise was the corner where my bed was. I thought it was my mom or someone else in the house, but I went outside and saw her asleep on the couch watching TV with the volume low. It didn't make sense, but a year later, I moved my bed to the other side of the room. I woke up one early morning, and I saw the side profile of a woman floating an inch off the ground where the bed used to be. She hovered from left to right, and all I remember was seeing her in a white veil, like a wedding dress almost, and she had brown skin like she was African American. I saw her hands at her side, but I couldn't make out any features on her face, like she didn't have one, or it was too blurry to see. She was only visible for about a little over a second as she floated from left to right. She was slightly translucent, like if you set the opacity in Photoshop to 80%, and had a very mild glow to her, just so that she was slightly brighter than her surroundings. I always thought I would freak out or have the biggest fright of my life if I ever saw an actual entity, but when I saw whoever that was, I didn't feel any fear at all. It seemed natural, like she was just passing by and wanted nothing to do with me. I sensed no bad intentions. I lived in that house for over 17 years and only saw an entity like that once ever. I considered myself to be an atheist when I was younger, but that encounter has made me acknowledge that there's something out there that we may or may not have all the answers to. I've been waiting to tell this one. It's 2016, summer vacation in South Africa, and I'm 15. I'm hanging out with 2 friends from my hometown on the daily, one a girl, one a boy. One day we decide to sleep over at the girl's house and have a movie night. This girl's mother used to be married to one of the most famous Afrikaans singers in SA, Worsie Visser, who tragically died in a plane crash in 1998. So we watch some comedies, and it gets late, and we start heading to bed. We are sitting in the room. My male friend and I are sleeping in and talking until around 1, when he realizes that his phone is still in the living room. He begs me to go get it, and I just decide I'll do it whatever, right? So, I step out of the hallway into the living room, and it's dark. There is this little stool thing right as you step into your right, and his phone is on it, so I bend down to pick it up. As I look back up, I think I see a little blonde boy with a red shirt and jean shorts on. I stare at it, trying to make out what I'm really seeing because there isn't supposed to be a boy here, right? As I'm still trying to process what's in front of me, I hear a hello, and as soon as the sound enters my ears, I get the biggest shiver of my life and just turn around and bolt into the room and explain what I saw. Of course, they don't believe me and laugh it off. The next morning comes around, and I tell this lady's husband, girl's dad, and he just said something along the lines of it's his time of year again. A few years later, and I bring it up to my mother again. She tells me this lady has complained to her about Worsie bugging her when she's alone in her house. She's told stories where she's walking around the house and sees him lying on the couch, and she just doesn't even mind him. I wish I knew this before I went to a sleepover, but I know what you're thinking. No, I never slept over there again. I had a really strange experience at my grandma's house one time. I used to take care of her full time. I had brought her back home from dialysis treatment, and she was having a particularly bad day, so I figured I would make her a cake. As she napped, I quietly made this fully piped and decorated masterpiece of a cake. I thought a cake this nice should go in the container with the snap on top so it would be perfect when she woke up. So, I set the container directly in the middle of the kitchen table, clamped on the top and waited for her to wake up so I could put her in the wheelchair and move her to the living room. Finally, she's awake. I walk into her room and tell her I've got a surprise for her in the kitchen. She excitedly sits up and is ready to go as I begin to pick her up to put her in the wheelchair. I hear a loud bang. I run into the kitchen, leaving her behind and see the top of the Snap-on container rolling around on the floor. I run around the house and do a sweep to make sure the doors are still locked, and no one is in the house. It's apparent that it's all clear. I come back and look at the cake, it's completely untouched, and I'm stunned. She hollers for me, and I bring her into the kitchen and tell her the entire situation. She then proceeded to tell me that she saw a ghost all of the time and personally recognized him as her grandfather. Which explained the hard-soled footsteps I would hear at night and large handprints on my mirror when I showered. I still, to this day, have no idea how a ghost could unsnap a cake container and throw the lid on the floor without touching the cake. Obligatory, not my story, but my grandmother's. She grew up in an older 3-bedroom house in the early 70s. Well, once in a while, as a teenager, she would see an older man outside in the swing area of their backyard. She never approached him. He never approached her. No one else had ever seen him, but her mother, my great-grandmother, thought it to be their uncle who had recently passed. One night when my grandmother was lying in bed, she looked up to see the older man standing in her room looking at her intently. He wouldn't leave and just stood there for several minutes. Once he was gone, she went to bed, only to wake up in the middle of the night to a house fire. The fire had started, they said, near an outlet in her bedroom, the same outlet the older man was standing at that very night. The entire family believed the man was warning them of the fire that was going to happen. Though it didn't work, and they lost everything in the home. Fast forward many years later, my grandmother is now in her 50s, and her mother had since passed. That little shit confessed to catching the curtains on fire with a box of matches and leading their family to believe in this ghost attempted heroic intervention. One time in college, my 2 other roommates were out of town, and I was getting ready to go to bed. It was early in the morning. I closed my room's door and turned the lights off. As I'm getting in bed, there are 3 distinctive knocks on my bedroom door. I immediately get goosebumps, something I never get. I jumped up and turned my bedroom light on and opened my door quickly. Nothing was there, just the dark empty house. Creeps me out until this day. When I was little, I was going to bed, and the light in my room was odd. I could see the warm glow of the hallway light streaming in through the door and my silhouette on the ground. However, it's a room that had an odd white flickering light to it. My body froze at the door, but I was curious and poked my head around the corner. There was a human figure about 5.5 feet tall, walking about a foot off the ground, and wreathed in the white and black of television static. My mind screamed run, but my body was still locked in place. It had taken 2 steps towards me before I was finally able to utter the word, and my legs kicked in. Curled up in my dad's lap for the rest of the night. So, a few weird events have happened in my house ever since a family member of mine, my cousin, passed away in 2013. My family genuinely thinks it's him messing with us like he would when he was alive. Small things happen like doors closing or opening alone, stuff going missing and reappearing, loud man footsteps when no one else is home and other truly inexplicable events. Anyway, we have a pool table in the living room, and I swear, I absolutely promise, I heard the billiard balls move on their own as if someone was playing. It was quick, only a second, and it was loud. We were all in the same room, the kitchen, eating dinner when we heard the noise from the pool table. I go to look, there's obviously no one in that room, and we all just kind of look at each other like, what just happened? I've never gotten such intense goosebumps. Someone, possibly my late cousin, was playing pool. Another time, I'd say a year or more ago, I was in my room with my best friend, and we're talking shit, doing our makeup, whatever. The door to my bathroom is slightly open. Sometime later, I see it a little less than slightly open but still noticeably open. None of us had been to the bathroom at that time we were talking. So, she and I start paying attention to it. Let me mention and keep in mind this door has to be forced closed. Physically shoved. It cannot slam close, and in all my years of living in this house, since I was in pre-K, I'm 20 now, the AC has never pushed the door closed. The AC wasn't even on, actually. Well, we're watching the door, and all of a sudden, the door slams shut. That shit closed all by itself in front of our faces. She screams, and we go running out of the room. My best friend has been terrified of that bathroom ever since. This is definitely the type of thing my cousin would have done while he was still alive. He loved messing with us. I miss him. He was definitely more of a big brother to me than a cousin. But it's comforting to think he's still here in some way, watching over the family. I used to work at one of the most haunted places in Ontario, Fort George National Historic Site, for 5 seasons between school. I had never believed it because plenty of times I've been there at night and nothing odd ever happened. During my last season working there, I stayed on until the winter. I'm sitting in the blockhouse, Soldiers Barracks, 15 minutes into opening. I'm by myself, and it's a slow rainy October day about midweek. Above me, I hear footsteps loud and prominent, not out of the ordinary. We have stuff upstairs for a field trip program we occasionally. It's off limits usually, but often enough, curious people take a look. Anyway, the footsteps are going across the building towards the stairs on my side of the blockhouse, so I go to the base of the steps to shoo off the visitors, and it's pitch dark up there. I call up, "Sir, ma'am, that area is off limits right now. If you come down here, I'd love to give a tour of the barracks for you." I get no answer. A bit shakier, I call back again. Still no answer. I take a few steps up the stairway just enough to see up there, and I see nothing, no light, no people, nothing. I'm shaking. I left the blockhouse and sat outside for the next hour. Nobody came out, and there are only 2 doors to the building, and I would see anybody leaving. I asked my coworkers if anybody was playing a joke on me. They said no, as all are older people that I didn't think would anyway. I also learned that no visitors were in the fort yet either. Turns out, after asking around, I'm not the first to experience this. There is a known ghost that does that on rare occasions. Nobody has seen them, but it has been reported before. I was a skeptic before this, but nothing logical would have made those footsteps. Short version, I sold manufactured homes in some parks across the South Los Angeles area. The park maintenance man told me a house just became vacant. So, I went to see it. They sell like hotcakes in the expensive home markets of California. I got my passkeys, opened the back door, into the mudroom, opened the kitchen door. It was ice cold. I held my hand up to the ceiling AC vent. Strange? No cold air coming out, as I wondered, what? A short old lady, maybe 5 feet tall. My ex-wife was 5 feet, so I knew 5 feet pretty well. White hair, blue spring dress, and a fluffy old lady apron. She looked mad too. I stood still and realized I could see right through her, to the counter behind. Oh God, I thought. She angrily asked, "This is my house, what are you doing in here?" "I'm leaving," I said. I started to walk across the kitchen to the dining area and towards the living room exit door. She started to fade away the further we got from the kitchen. I opened the living room door and got out. I went straight to the main office. They asked me what had happened. "What do you mean?" I said. "Your face is pale white." The light came on in one of the offices. "Did you just go there?" "Yes," I said. "One lady screamed. You saw her ghost." "Why did you go in there?" "She just died. The ambulance just left." I calmed down, went back to the mobile home. The AC was not on, and the circuit breaker was off. There were even spider webs on the outside of the breaker box, and no one had been in there for a while. And I locked the place up and said to myself, I just saw a real ghost today. What would have happened if I had tried to stay in the home with an angry ghost? I don't want to find out. And I did sell that home a few weeks later.